Jim questions and get answers? Do you everybody want to do or what?
That's what we want to do. I'm gonna let you fellas talk. You can ask him questions and whatnot during your conversation. If we get to a point where we've got a specific question, we'll just kind of raise our hand or something or throw it in there. But otherwise, we just kind of want to let you fellas visit and talk about some of the stuff you already been talking about. The wagon road up here and the Loomis Road and whatever else.
I've got a list of 33 questions. You're going to need some tonsil lubricant before you get to the
Let me get you fellas a cup of water real quick. I'll be right back.
I didn't mean old Tanglefoot.
Okay.
Oh boy. Well, may as well get started.
Yeah, go ahead and get started, Doc.
I have a feeling that Open Space is considerably interested in that sawmill, and that's what we're talking about right here, only they didn't hear it.
Yeah.
But would you go over that again and locate that's a big steam sawmill?
Yeah.
And about when was that?
Oh, probably long in the 20s. No, I guess 25, long there.
25. And
I was born in 18, and so I was probably 7, 8 years old when
but you certainly remember it. And the family bought it and operated the sawmill themselves.
well, Frank Woods was a partner on it.
Frank?
Woods?
Oh, Frank Woods. Okay. For whom Woods Gulch is named.
Yeah.
Okay. And that steam engine is in storage right here in the barn. And you're surprised if it's the same engine.
You're right.
And probably have a chance to show him that engine, and he'll know if that was the same old engine.
Before we get out of here, we'll walk in and look wherever you fellas want to look.
And after that period, how long did that sawmill run?
Oh, I would say probably up until probably 28, 30.
So it was something over 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the market was Boulder.
Yeah.
And what trees were you cutting?
Anything that was any size, we cut spruce and pine, yellow pine and spruce.
And the firs on the backside hill here?
Well, what I call spruce is what you call firs.
I suspected that. I suspected that. Some of them up there now are 12 to 14 inches diameter, so they must have grown some in 100 years for you to cut them too.
Probably. Of course, but we wouldn't cut anything under, I'd say 18 to 24 inches.
That's something to make a note of. 18 to 24 inches.
And I think you were telling me about all these small stumps around. Well, that was when the beetles went through here and killed all the trees, and then they let the public come in and cut the dead trees and get them out for firewood. And that's where your small stumps come from.
Then any of the 10 and 12 inch stumps that were stumbling around up here, even though they seemed to be quite old, those were not saw logs.
Probably not. Probably some beetle killed that they took down.
Did you
Okay.
move the lumber mill around, or did it stay in
No,
one
it
place?
was stationary.
It was stationary. Okay.
How about some of the portable mills that operated up here into the 50s? Were they taking some of those smaller stumps?
Not very many. You take a log that's any smaller than 12 or 14 inches. You couldn't get anything out of it. It wouldn't pay. The time you slabbed it, boy, you got a 2x4.
Well, that's been a puzzle to me. I keep stumbling over those stumps, and I remember when the portables were operating up here, and a lot of that didn't make sense. Now I guess it does. No, I guess it does. What size saw was on that? It was a circle saw, of course.
Yeah, and it was, I can't remember, but I think it was about a 42 inch.
42 inch? That'd take a big log.
Yeah,
That, don't know of any of them that might be around on the ranch here, or was.
I don't know any, no.
And you retired the sawmill, and then from then on, it was all contract with these portable
Yeah.
jobs. Now, as I look across the, let's see, what's the name of that draw that goes down to Boulder Creek that we're looking across right here?
Right here,
Yeah,
that's Martin Gulch.
Martin Gulch.
Yeah,
And the far side over there, some of those sawmills, portable sawmills, even went along that hillside up there, didn't they?
yeah,
It's surprising where they took some of those darn things. They were run with truck engines and put on skids, and they just moved them around.
yeah.
Okay. Open Space calls this draw right down below here Columbine Gulch. It runs right
Yes.
down off the top of the hill here, down into,
Well, the Columbine Gulch we used to run is the one that comes down that side over there.
yeah,
That's what one and it went into the Loomis Gulch, and then the Loomis Gulch went down to the Woods Gulch where the mill was.
okay. And then Martin Gulch continues on down to Creek.
Yeah,
Okay.
it goes clear into the South Boulder.
Now from that ruin down here on the flat in Woods Gulch, there's remains of probably 2 buildings down there, one of which is very old and has been patched up several times, and they've all fallen in now. What's the history of those?
I think they were built by the people that was logging for us,
I see.
just for while they were logging.
There's 2 stages there. One of them's old enough to have square nails, and it was log and has notch corners. And then there was another one later that has wire nails, the round ones, and
Aren't you thinking of the Martin house?
I've always thought so.
Yeah, that Martin house was one with the square nails in it.
Okay,
And the deal on the other side that had the round nail, we built that for, see, we tore the Martin house all the inside out and used it for a hay barn.
that makes sense.
And then this one out this way, we built for a shed for cattle, to protect them.
Okay, and then just above it up the draw is one of your typical barns.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll get to those in a few minutes after we get the sawmills out of the way here. Up that draw that they call Columbine, and I don't know what you call it, probably Martin, where it comes down just over the ridge here. And
I
it
guess,
comes down to the old Martin house.
I guess we never even had a name on that.
All right,
Because
it isn't very big, but there's a good stream comes down it. And there was a road that went up on the west or right-hand side of it going up. And that must have been a timber hauling road too.
I would imagine, yeah, I can't place that.
Doc, is the boiler down in that draw? That
No.
boiler that's bricked in?
I don't know of it. There's a wagon wreck in there though that I was coming to.
There was an old boiler sitting down into one of those gulches that had brick around it. Is that one of yours, Jim?
No.
No?
I'm thinking the one you're talking about is down below the Martin house, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
could be.
That
Yeah.
was that mill that was down in there.
Okay.
But the one we had was, we just gathered up rock and
Oh, okay.
got clay from that, where that road goes around out of the Woods Gulch. That clay was sticky as a dickens, and we get clay out of there, and then the fire just baked it and worked just like brick.
I bet it would.
Hmm.
I bet it would. Anyway, up that draw, there's the remains of what was a mighty stout corral. It isn't very big, and it extends from the creek up toward the road, probably about 75 feet. It's almost down now. There's a gate there, and it has hand-forged ring hinges.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that would be my dad's work.
And there's the same kind of hinges on the gate up at the top of Myers Gulch, where that old wagon road goes down to the flume.
Yeah,
Identical, made by the same man.
yeah, right. He made all the hinges for all these gates. Now that winter time, we'd make up all the hinges for the gates and all the double trees, single trees, and everything we needed for next year. We worked in the blacksmith shop over there.
He was an artist.
Yeah,
The interesting thing about it is that I have never seen any of those hinges before that were made with a sharp spike on the end so that you just plain drove them in the gate post.
yeah.
Don, have you ever seen any of those? Okay. You got me beat. These were the first I ever saw that I found up here on this ranch.
Well, yeah, like you said, they're unique. Every blacksmith had his own touch, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Anyway, do you know anything about that corral? That was a stout one. I thought it might have been for bulls or stallions, but it doesn't figure down in there. It might have been for draft horses for
Could have been draft
logging,
horses for loggers.
but you don't place it.
I can't place it. I've
Yeah, I think
been out of this country too long.
well, I thought that open space might recover those hinges with a post for a museum, because they are museum pieces.
Mhm.
Then if you go up that road in the draw, for about 300 yards, there's the wreckage of a wagon. There's just a hub and a part of a wheel sticking up out. There's, what do you call that front axle that the wheels are attached to in wagon terminology?
I don't.
Anyway, that's all that's left of a wagon
That
turned
was
over. down.
always the front wheels to me.
It suits me. But you don't know that wagon either.
No,
Did you use trucks on the ranch?
you mean for timber?
Anything?
Well, we had a truck here at the ranch here that we could haul cattle out with,
I see.
but that was all we used it for.
And what was it?
It was Dodge. Must have been about 50 or so.
Okay. And we've already covered, but for the benefit of people that weren't with us, you drove a 1926 Dodge High Wheeler to school every day down in Boulder from here.
Well, when I could get through.
Yeah.
I packed 3 sets of chains when I tore up 2 of them. Then I'd leave it and walk home. And I always, then when I got home, I'd repair 2 sets of chains so I'd have 3 again. But the road was never plowed or anything else. If you got high centered, you got out with a shovel and shoveled out from under till you hit the ground again.
And we're talking about the 1930s.
Yep. Well, before that, actually.
They rebuilt that road in the late 20s, and then the CCCs again in the early 30s, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew Jim in high school, and when you saw that big old high-wheel Dodge come chugging in, I knew that the roads were passable to Walker's Ranch. let's see, you said that wagon road that runs from the top of Myers Gulch down to the aqueduct was also a road that went down to the Magnolia Road, and I haven't found any trace of that. The trees have got it pretty well covered up. So I always assumed it was for construction of the aqueduct.
No. It was a road down to there, and we used to, at one time, the precinct was Magnolia, and you'd have to go over there to vote. And folks would take saddle horses then, we didn't take a wife, and ride down that road. Over the aqueduct and all that, but still had a road down through there.
Did the stagecoaches or freight wagons use that road as a cutoff too?
I don't think so. I never heard
It
of
was
it.
too late for that.
Well, it was too steep for a lot of stuff too.
I have trouble just walking it. Thinking that they had wagons going down there, and it's just marvelous what horses and wagons could do. That was real horsepower.
Yeah.
I'm very much interested in your help to trace out the stage and wagon roads up here. There's a lot of old possibilities, but
You mean the one out of Bear Canyon?
well, Gregory was first, and then
Bear Canyon is the oldest.
Bear Canyon was first.
Yep. Bear Canyon was the first one that went through here so they could get to Magnolia. Or not Magnolia.
Central City.
Yeah, Blackhawk.
Gregory Diggins, yeah, right. Well, now that's a piece of history straightened out. I'd always,
Because when they built the Gregory Road, so that's when they built the Ridge Road out through here, clear out to States, or out where Wings were at.
do what?
That Ridge Road went clear through to where Wings lived.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's when they built Gregory Canyon, then they could finish that on out this way. Before that, it would come up through this way from Bear Canyon.
this trip's been worthwhile. Okay, the only reason for that early traffic was for people to get to the Gregory Diggins.
Freighters mostly.
Right, but they did have stagecoaches too.
Oh, I guess. I never heard my dad mention any about being any stagecoaches, but it was a pretty rough road and pretty rugged, and they never could depend on it
Right,
because that
kept
slide.
washing out,
Huh?
kept washing out.
No, that slide at the lower end.
On Gregory?
There's a rock, just as you start up the canyon, there's a rock slide in there. And that thing kept sliding all the time. I know my granddad had a wagon and a team coming from Boulder up through there, and he had a dog with him. And a squirrel ran across that slide, and the dog took after it. And it took him better than half a day throwing the rock out of there so he could get through with the wagon.
That must be the tail slope that comes down from the south.
Might be, yeah.
That sound about right?
Yeah.
It's about the right location.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that was one reason they finally abandoned that road, was because you never knew whether you could get over it or not.
Okay. And it was a toll road, and so was Bear Canyon.
I imagine at that time, probably, yeah.
I don't know where the toll road was on Gregory. It must have been at the mouth. There was a cattle ranch there, the Muggins Ranch.
Yeah.
But I think we recently found the toll road for Bear Canyon.
Oh, did you?
It's a location that hasn't been documented. There was some old brick, some cast iron from an old stove, and it's below where I would have expected it to be. But I think we finally found it. And let's see, Harmon was one of the builders of that road.
Yeah.
And they've got Harmon Draw, name for him up here.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought about going into the history business, have you?
No,
Well, you're straightening out some. Let's see, the wagon road and stage that came up Gregory when it did come up, and I've seen a picture of a Concord coach on that road. I don't know how they did it.
well, see, when you come up Gregory and then what we always called the fill, where you hit nothing but smooth rock over there.
That goes up Long Canyon
Yeah,
and then down to Kossler's.
yeah.
And then where did it go?
Well, then that went on out to Ridge, the Ridge Road and through by the Myers Field. Myers Field and on out to Wings.
And that was right through, what is that, Forsyth Canyon? Up Forsyth Creek?
Yeah, but
That's
that
where
was-
Wings' place was.
Yeah, yeah.
And, let's see that. Did that cross Myers Gulch where the barn sits? And went right straight, west through there? No?
No, it stayed, that road stayed, but, well, I guess it might have been, stayed right at the foot of Myers Field. That's the one that opens up towards, you were talking about the road down to Magnolia. And he was right at the foot of that, and then just slapped on that hill around and come up above the, can't think of that guy's name now. Anyway, it come up right through to where Wings lived, but there was a Retallick, right above the Retallick place.
Okay. There's a Retallick Gulch over there too.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Then the road that is still a little more than a two-track that crosses just below the barn down there in the lower Myers Gulch. And there used to be a portable sawmill right across from it. And that road that goes through there, I thought went over into the gulch too, did it?
yeah,
Okay. Then there were two ways to get to the same place.
yeah.
I wish I'd run into you a little while ago. It saved a lot of shoe leather. This little cabin right here was also on a road that come from up in there and went down through here along what the dickens is the name of this ridge?
Langridge Dike? Langridge Dike?
No,
Further over?
yeah, it mentioned that name a minute or two ago. The people that homesteaded up in here and then down on the South Boulder and this ridge along behind here.
Wings?
Huh?
Wings?
No,
Metallic?
no.
Guess we're all coming up dry.
Boy, I've reached the age of I wish I could remember so many things. Oh, it's on the maps. It's one of the oldest names in the country here. You mentioned it a while ago. That piffle, we'll get to it later.
If I mention it, I forgot it.
Boy, if my remember was anything up to my forgetter, I'd be a whiz. But anyway, this little cabin is probably a lot older than it's been given credit for. Would you say that back, as far back as the 60s?
Oh, yeah.
I read an account somewhere by the Kosslers that this might have been here in 1859.
I'm satisfied that we're back towards the end of the 60s someplace, the oldest building in the country here. Now if we could find out who built it and why. Because
Well, the name I heard was a fellow named Lou Jain, Jain, and that was written by one of the Kosslers for a newspaper article in the 50s.
the Jane family was a family of stagecoachers.
Well, and they mentioned that, I don't know which Kossler it was, but they wrote it in 1950s for the Boulder Camera. And they mentioned that this cabin, they
that
think,
was
was here in
probably-
1859.
Galen's first wife, she wrote for the camera.
I think it's fallen into place. I don't know whether it could be documented or not, but it's interesting that you come up with the Jane family because they were a family of coachmen. There's a draw out near 6 Mile Fold, just east, that's called Jane Draw, and this is letting the cat out of the bag, and I guess I probably shouldn't. Heck, it's on city open space, and on a archaeological survey, we found a site of probably 1860s place that had burnt to the ground, but the artifacts that put it back about that far, and it almost certainly was a stage station, more than just a stop. I still haven't said where it was, but it all ties in, and the Janes were known to have been coachmen in the left-hand canyon area. So this is all fallen in place, and I'm sure glad I heard the Jane name attached to this. So it very well could have been a stage stop, but it wouldn't go back as far as 59, probably, because the first stages would have been just post 1860, but not by much. 64 maybe, or something like that. It's something we'll have to work on.
Yeah.
I just wonder who could do that.
I
You
saw,
have my number.
I saw that newspaper clipping either when I was talking with Stella one time or one of your sisters, and I don't remember which one. They showed me their scrapbooks, and that newspaper clipping was in there.
Need that.
Probably was my sister, Lita Daniel.
Right, and then you had one over in, didn't you have one over in Glenwood for Grape Avenue or something over?
Oh, yeah, we had one in Boulder,
Yeah, and I remember visiting her one time and
yeah.
looking at her scrapbook and all the pictures, and that article was in, it
Who's
was
that?
either her or Stella that showed me that, I don't remember which.
Who was that?
One of Jim's sisters or Stella Rogers.
Ruth, next to the oldest, lived in Boulder, or on Grape.
Yeah, that was her.
And then Lita, my oldest sister, always lived up here. They got a cabin just in below where Stella's at, where she did have. And then when we left the ranch, well, they stayed here and worked for Taylor for a year or two.
I don't like to appear as a scavenger, but I do it. Do you suppose there's any chance that your family might have some old photographs or clippings that we could use in this?
I've looked and looked for those, and I don't know where they went. Because I can remember pictures of the mill down there, and I cannot find them. I called my sister in Denver to see if she has them. Called my sister up in Alaska to see if she's got them. None of them got it.
That's strange,
There's
but
a whole bunch of pictures.
Ruth shared a whole bunch of them with me. We got spreadsheets of them. I don't know if we can photos off of them or not.
They're on the computer?
Yeah.
Or, oh, okay.
How about Charles Hockaday?
She's still around.
How about what?
Charles Hockaday,
Oh, yeah, he was on the, across the
Wherever
creek.
stuff went.
the Crescent Meadows. And your grandfather bought that property from him?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about his history?
Know anything about what?
His history?
No, I don't.
He was a teamster. He built a road licensed from the territorial legislature in 1874, now known as the Reynolds Ranch. He may have built that house. He did build a road up the draw below it and through what's now a lodgepole forest over to the North Beaver Creek, down to South Boulder Creek, up the South Beaver Creek and on to the Gregory Diggins.
Right.
1874. In 1875, he was elected territorial sheriff. And Colorado became a state the next year, so he was the last territorial sheriff and the first state sheriff in Boulder County because his 2-year term overlapped that.
Time.
And he's planted in the marble orchard up here on Kossler Place, that little
yeah.
private orchard. He and his wife are in it, and I think one other member of the family.
Could be, I don't remember. I know my grandmother was buried up there, and then 'cause
Your
they
grandmother's buried there?
well, they couldn't get in to get to the cemetery, and then the next spring, why then they dug it up and took her to Green Mountain.
That's interesting. Well, there are several people in there, including
yeah.
several recent people.
I didn't know that, but I knew there were several in there before,
Joe Malcolm, he was a retired Marine colonel from World War II, I think is the one that built that great castle back there. And he's buried in there and several members of the family already.
Oh, is it?
Mhm.
They've still kept it for a cemetery then.
Apparently so. It's perfectly legal. I checked with the coroner years ago, Norm Howe, and you can still do it.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
And,
I know Skates did it. You know, Dick and Edith is buried up
Yes.
there.
I was up and visited with Edith just before she died. She was 94.
Yeah.
So Dick went in 85, I think,
Yeah.
and they're both in there. But then that's a heritage ranch, so they're safe there for a while.
Well, I don't know. Dick told me one time that they had that surveyed and plotted out.
Is there a cemetery?
They had
The
what?
cemetery?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I say it's safe now because it's on a heritage ranch.
Oh,
They've declared it a heritage ranch because the same family's been on it for over 100 years. I kind of miss those people.
yeah. Yeah.
That ranch also has the Colorado Cattlemen's Association has the primary interest in the Skates Ranch now, because Edith turned it over to them before she died.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Does anybody live up there anymore?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think Marie still takes care of the place, doesn't she? Marie Mosden?
Yeah, I think, well, she used to run her cows
Yeah.
up there.
Talking about the Skates property?
Yeah.
Doc, you and I were up Magnolia last fall, and we went by there, and I thought we saw some activity out there maybe that suggested somebody was living there, but I might not be recalling that correct.
You thought we saw what?
Up at the Skates ranch up there, it looked like, I was trying to remember that we saw some activity up there that looked like somebody might have been living in there. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sure there is. I just don't know who anymore.
Okay.
George
Gigi
Gigi
Yeah.
was taking care of her
place.
right up the last there, and,
Yeah.
and the place too.
Yeah.
Yeah. George is quite a guy. The Kossler family, when did they come in?
Well, see, they were miners at Black Hawk in Central City. And if you was in the mines over there more than 2 years, you had miner's puff or miner's consumption.
Yeah,
Well, they started with that. And so they went up here and bought the ranch and thought maybe getting out of the mines might help them. But
Too
it
late.
didn't. Too
it
late.
never did. My grandfather went that way too. They all did, the old timers.
Let's see, my mom was,
So that would have been considerably after the period we're talking about.
well, let's see, now,
See,
my mom got married in 1902. And so you take 22 years off of that,
1880.
would put her about where she was born. And she was, I think, 10 when they come over here on the place,
So it makes it 1890.
somewhere in there.
well, that fits. That fits, the 1890s. So they were old timers up here too. Well, your grandfather married a Kossler?
No,
No,
my dad did.
your dad did. Like I say, if I remember, well, this is something that might be of interest to people. We've talked about it, but the wildlife up here. Remember jackrabbits? Were there any jackrabbits up here?
Few, not very many.
But some.
Yeah,
And I think that's interesting because now that it's forested, no way. But back then, yeah, and west of here too. Marmots?
Very
And
few.
marmots. Same thing, grassland
yeah,
animals.
Prairie dogs?
no.
It's interesting, but no. Ring-tailed cats?
Worse than here.
Can't think of any.
I've known of 2 colonies back in the old days between here and the halfway house down Flagstaff Road. And I'm surprised there weren't any here, but they hang around canyons mostly.
Yeah, there wasn't any that I can think of up in here.
And they had bobcats,
Yeah,
badgers,
yeah.
bears.
Very few, but there was a few around, nowhere near what they are now.
No, but there always were some. Did you know of any cattle killers among them?
Did what?
Any problem with bears being cattle killers? Know of any grizzlies anywhere in the country?
Now,
And wolves.
it was just one that I know of. I
Did
tried,
you ever see that bugger?
Hmm?
Did you ever see that bugger?
yeah. That wolf,
Yeah.
yeah, I took a shot at him once. Or I was going to, I should say. My dad bought me a brand new rifle. He said he'd pay me $10 if I could get the wolf. And like a dummy, I hadn't cleaned the rifle up and took it out that morning. And either he had or something else had killed a deer right at the lower end of this opening over the top of the hill and down there. And he was eating off of that. So I thought, boy, I got $10. And after the rifle clicked and the bolt had cosmoline in it and cold weather it froze up and it wouldn't fire.
I wonder if I'd ever heard that story before. Boy, that used to be pretty common, those firing pins stick.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this back in high school days. I saw the bugger once, heard him a couple of times, and you saw him several times,
Yeah.
And-
3 times up here.
and probably heard him quite a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
I talked to game warden down at Central City about that bugger. they knew about him over there. And the general consensus was that he was a loner, the last of his bunch, and he was just making a circle, a big one, around through there. Probably come up Bear Canyon, through here, over and down into South Boulder Creek and over toward Rollinsville, Apex, the Central City area, and then around, and probably made that round over a period of time. How long would you think he might have been coming through here?
Well, that one year was the only time I've ever saw him, and I saw him actually 3 times that year.
Just 1 year?
Yeah. But,
And they figured that probably he was the last of his kind. He was looking for company or a mate, and finally gave up and went elsewhere because he just disappeared without a trace. But that's interesting. Most people, wolves here? But there is a Wolf Hill out north of town. Must have been named for something bigger than a rabbit. Let's see,
You missed the mountain lions.
Painters?
mountain lions.
I've never seen one up here. There was a few I've tracked them, but I never saw
They had manners then.
them. Yeah, you bet they did. Because at that time,
All of the while, that same
Brian
one.
had a bounty on of $200. If you got one, you'd get $200 for it.
Coyotes had a bounty off and on too, but it was more like $1.50. But that's one of the reasons they were scarce. And the bears too, they stayed out of sight.
Yeah, they better.
That's right. They had manners then. Let's see. The road to Crescent Meadows, and that's part of the ranch, and you run cattle back and forth across there. And well, I can't remember his name again now. We used that just a few minutes ago too. Tall, red-headed member of the family, had a pockmarked face, lived over there.
What diggy was it?
No. Lived, we should have got at this 20 years ago.
It's your fault, I was here. Anyway, how did you get across the creek?
I don't know whether it's still there or not, but they did build a footbridge across the creek. down
Okay.
there. Okay, we had a regular bridge there. And Boy Stouter deteriorated after we left. But we had a bridge there. We took cars and horses and wagons and everything through.
I see. I'd always wondered about that, and I'm not familiar with the bridge.
Yeah, it was.
This fella is Mrs. Rogers' father,
Carl,
Carl
Daniel.
Daniel. Well, that's what I said. Yeah, they lived over there
Yeah.
and took care of that part of the ranch, so
Yeah.
back and forth across was no problem.
Oh no.
How about a schoolhouse up in here?
Well, of course, no. You burnt one of them down up here. And then this one up here above where Stella is now. And then in the Woods Gulch, about where that house sits in the Woods Gulch, that you can see down there. Well, originally that part of that house was a schoolhouse.
Okay.
Because my 2 kids went to school down there. And Bowles' kids went down there. Bowles was the one that had the sawmills around here.
Who was the schoolman?
Miss Greason, Miss Greason, she lived in Boulder. She was related to Stella's husband.
Okay. And then there was another one that came up from El Dorado Springs and stayed with the Kosslers at their school. Her name was Dorothy Cheesebro,
Oh, yeah.
and she walked up here.
And then my first teacher was Ruth Dunn.
Ruth Hellert later.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she used to come right up the canyon up here, and she stayed up here at the ranch, and then we'd go walk back weekends.
Does anybody detect any difference between the modern school, ma'am, and some of those ladies?
When my mom went to high school, she walked from the Kossler's place down to that academy down there in Boulder.
St.
Gertrude?
St. Gertrude's Academy?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, she walked there every day to school.
Jim, you said your children went to school down here at the schoolhouse in the Woods Gulch down there. When was that? When were they in school?
Oh, they were,
That have been the 40s or?
no, well, it could have been, yeah. Let's see.
So you made good time after high school.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the forests up here. It's apparent that when your grandfather established this ranch, this was practically all open country and that was grasslands.
Pretty much. Of course, a lot of these little homesteads, some of them had fences on, but a lot of it was open. And then for a long time, we had a permit back here that run clear to Pine Cliff. It would turn right out of the place under the permit.
But the point being that cows don't eat trees, and this was open grasslands that supported a herd of how many cows?
We had about 350 to 400. And when we sold it, we was lucky to run 250 and rent Tolan's up at Tolan. Had rented about 6,000 acres up there to run them on.
Skates run their herd up there in the Mammoth Basin too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did Potassos.
Yep.
Right.
You ran them all together, didn't you?
Yeah.
You ran them all together?
And Mr. Walker, were you using the same brand that your granddaddy had?
And I got, well, originally our brand was just a cross.
Okay.
A cross?
And then everybody started with a cross and a bell and a cross and this or something else. So you couldn't tell what you were doing. If they wanted your cow, all they had to do was put a bell under the cross and it was there. So then we went to this triangle 2/slash.
Triangle 2/slash, okay.
And that's what we had at the last.
That's in
That's right.
scale house.
That's right, that's right. You talk about folks modifying, being able to modify them brands a little bit. I heard if a fella got caught with a running iron in them days, he was in pretty deep trouble.
Yeah, but there was a lot of them carried.
Yeah, I bet they did.
Put that brand there for me, would you, Jim? You were running your herds up on the forest after you'd gone to Herefords then?
Yeah.
Do you know when you switched from Galloway's to Herefords? When that happened?
Oh, let's see, about 39 or 40.
39 or 40?
Jim, would that work any better if you got on the other side of that pencil?
No.
You tried it, huh? let's see, we get back to business here no matter what. Back to the forest, then you kept working to keep the forest from intruding on the grasslands as best you could, as long as you could.
Yeah. Yeah, they take in the winter time, a lot of times when it was real cold and froze, why, Pop would give me a single bitted axe, and these little trees that was coming up, you just give them a whack with that and it'd bust them off. And he'd send me out every time I had any spare time. Why, that's what I was doing to try to keep some of these meadows open and try to keep the trees down.
As you look back, going west, up through the Magnolia country, wasn't that all open too?
Pretty much, yeah.
The Gigi's place up there, and Reynolds and all the rest of it. Forest fires have anything to do with that?
Not that I know of.
Didn't have many then, huh?
No.
Okay. You know about the halfway house or the stage stop on the Wing Place, right straight west of here through Forsyth Canyon?
Yeah.
And do you have a handle on the time that the toll road came through Bear Canyon?
No, I don't. I don't know when my grandpa homesteaded, you know, and it was the road he had to take coming up here then.
Uh-huh.
But I couldn't tell you when he homesteaded up here.
Probably the late 60s to early 70s.
Might have been. You know, I got kind of a picture down there that he got for raising the best wheat in Boulder County. And that was raised right about where the schoolhouse is now in Boulder. Where the high school is,
Yeah.
that was about where that was raised. And it's got a date on it. And I think at that time he was starting to homestead up here, but I'm not sure.
That's interesting. We've got a little documentation on that canyon road. I'll have to refer back to that. The Langridge dike back here, that was about 1900. He was working that.
Yeah.
Did they jump that mill out and sell the machinery out of it?
Some of it, but see, that was a cyanide mill. And about all the machinery they had in there was crushers to try to break that rock down, but they never broke it down fine enough to get the gold out.
Hey, Di, I don't know which one of you is, but one of you fellers is buzzing a little bit.
Probably me.
No, okay. I just didn't know if you knew it or not, okay.
They do that with
Yeah,
me.
they do.
We're modern enough to be wired for sound. Well, let's see here. There I go. I can hear that. These meadows, some of them at least, were hay meadows, and you cut hay on them. Did the family plow and plant hay, or was that natural?
No problem planting, raised alfalfa.
Alfalfa.
This field all around here,
One on me, didn't know they raised alfalfa up here.
oh, yeah, all this field would take down to the Lomas place down here. All those fields down through there was alfalfa.
Up at the Reynolds place, I found a few wisps of timothy.
But it was more wild hay up that way.
There was a wild timothy here?
Well, the timothy that it was here is a form of timothy, but it's smaller.
Okay, I'm learning something there. Pleasure to do business with you. Let's see. Then, their hay meadows here all had been plowed and planted, and it was alfalfa. I'll be darned. Okay. Now we're getting to,
Doc, I have a question about that also. Some of the old Sturdivant photos show these meadows that look like there were potatoes in them.
Oh, well, yeah. That's the way most of them, people up here got their start was raising potatoes.
Potatoes?
My granddad raised potatoes and he used to haul them to Boulder in the wintertime on a sled. And he said any time that he got less than $1.00 for potatoes, why he just wouldn't haul them anymore.
Now, Jim, last weekend we got a fella that comes up here and does draft horse plowing and whatnot, and he got a spring-toothed harrow out here in this south field last weekend and turned it up just a little bit, and we had a bunch of them little girls out there running around putting them cut up spuds out in that field. Do you remember seeing potatoes growing in this south field over here when you was little?
It used to be you could plant any place up here and raise potatoes. And now, well, I'd say for the last probably 40, 50 years, you couldn't get a potato to grow up here if you had to. And everybody used to, the way they got their start raising potatoes, take Winiger out there. He used to raise potatoes and take them to Black Hawk and Central. And up there they had scurvy then, and potatoes would stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd take potatoes over there, he'd get $1 for 1 or 2 potatoes, just people come along to buy them.
that's the magic word, Winiger.
Where?
The one I was fishing for. Winiger. I knew it'd come up. You know,
Well, write it down.
Winiger.
Write that thing down.
I've got it 100 times.
Oh, yeah.
Like this.
That's what you said, wasn't it? Yeah.
And you know Winiger too. We all
Vinegar
know.
Ridge, yeah, it's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
elusive, wasn't it? Well, anyway. How many horses did you keep up here?
Oh, we'd usually have about 4 saddle horses and possibly 3 teams, 6 work horses.
And what horses did you have for teams? Heavy or light
Heavy.
draft?
Yeah,
Heavy?
draft horses.
Percherons or?
No, just all mixed.
Oh,
just horses. No special breed.
Morgan's on steroids, huh? Yeah, let's see. At any given time, how many hired hands did you have up here?
Well, of course, when we was running the mill, we had about 4 or 5. But then ordinarily on the ranch, we'd have 2. And sometimes 3 in the haying season. But,
Were they family men or go-throughs?
well, they were people we'd hire. Of course, Carl always helped. He was on the other side of
Sure.
here. And then this John Yackel, he just worked between us and Kossler's and just around in this country. You could always get him.
Did you say John Hinkle?
Yackel.
Oh, I remember that name too, but the other one was gonna start another.
Can I interrupt you, gentlemen?
Stream of water. And right up above the house, or the one that burnt down in that draw, I've had to go in there with a dump rake and back in and pull the hay out because it wouldn't dry in there, it was so wet. Now there's nothing.
Now you've given me the opening I've been hoping for. How are the winters up here?
Nice, about 4 feet.
4-foot snows.
Well, we always figured on about a 3-foot snow in the spring, or in the fall. And then fairly nice through the winter. And then in the spring, you'd always get another 3 or 4 foot of snow. When Stella was born, we couldn't get out of here with a car. And I took a spring wagon and a team of horses and took her to Boulder, because we didn't want her up here. And when I went over the top of the hill up there by Kossler's, you know how a spring wagon tongue, because it was dragging in the snow.
And that was after the Flagstaff road had been graded.
Yeah,
Darn good thing, huh?
yeah. Because the cars couldn't get up. I took her with a spring wagon down to where the road goes up to the flagpole forks of the road there. And then they finally got a car up that far and picked her up and took her all into Boulder.
Wind ever blow up here?
Well, occasionally, quite a bit. I can remember going to that schoolhouse up there where I'd back from here till I got into timber. You couldn't face it going up this way, right straight up.
All this talk about droughts in recent year, we've seen a few of them, I think, haven't we?
Yeah.
But
You know, the thing that they talk about drought, and this has really started a little bit before we sold the place. It's when this country started drying up and you couldn't raise hay where you used to have it a foot and a half tall. And taken a long time for it to come out of it. I hope it does. But
I think the country's been drying up gradually ever since the breakup of the Ice Age 12,000 years ago, but in our time you can certainly have seen a difference,
oh yeah,
a real difference. A lot of springs through the foothills have dried up
oh yeah.
forever, I'm sure. Winters aren't like they used to be. They're not as cold, not as much moisture.
No, you don't. I would just wonder how all these people that lived up in here, if we happened to catch a winter like we used to, they'd be in tough shape. Because,
Well, some of them could stand a little modification of their shape.
like here, we'd take 2 wagons to town in the fall, and we'd pick up all our groceries for winter. And we'd keep them, and if we couldn't get out of here, why, maybe some yeast or salt and pepper, maybe a little sugar is all you ever needed. We had our own potatoes and butchered our beef and had 3 pigs that we butchered. The state here had everything, really. Bought all kind of vegetables by the case. And,
Do a little hunting on the side.
pardon?
Do a little hunting on the side. A little venison.
Oh,
Elk.
no, I wouldn't do that.
Jim, what are all those hooks then up in the barn?
They look an awful lot like meat hooks in there, I tell you.
The statute of limitations is Oh, boy. But there have been some changes, there's just no question about that.
Jim,
This,
how long did it take you to go to town on a wagon?
Oh, probably 4 hours.
To get there? That's just to get there.
Yeah, and then another 4 hours or a little longer coming back with a load.
Sure, coming back uphill. Did you ever spend the night in town? Would you go down? No, you'd come back?
Yeah.
It'd make for a long day, wouldn't
Normal?
it? Yeah, no, if it's what you used to, sure.
They're shorter in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Neil's had a sawmill down in the bottom of the canyon too, didn't they? A big steam mill.
Yeah.
Were you ever in it? Or
No, I
down there? There's a story that Frank Barber from Eldorado Springs contracted to deliver the steam boilers to that and came up through here, one of the canyons, and across, probably behind this ridge, and then winched them with ropes on some of those extra large yellow pines clear down to the bottom of the canyon. Did you ever hear anything like that? They got to get those boilers in there somehow, all right, but it said for many years after that, there were rings around those trees where the ropes had discarded the bark to let those boilers down.
Well, no, I don't. The only ones I know is my dad was talking about, or my granddad told him, that when they started taking boilers and stuff into Black Hawk and Central, that they come up over Flagstaff, and he said he remembered seeing trees where they had oxen that they couldn't pull them up through there, so they'd put a rope around the tree and then get the oxen to pull backwards to pull the wagon up there.
There's a bit of history,
No, I guess.
and I've never run into it.
Yeah, that was, they pull them up on top of Flagstaff, and then that would be the steepest part, getting up there.
Where would they go through to get on the Piedmont to go to Central and probably up here on Magnolia Flats?
Probably.
I ain't gonna live long enough to get straightened out on these old transportation routes. It'd be hard to find any traces of that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Were
My dad
oxen?
showed me where they used to take them up at, you know, but that timber's all gone now, but he said that you could see where the ropes went around them, and the oxen couldn't pull the wagons up, but they could rope around, and then the oxen would pull down.
How old do you think the oldest trees were up here that were logged or that you've known about? Never checked that.
No,
Check that
never
out.
bothered to count the
Sit
ring,
down and count and ring.
but I know we, I've seen logs up here that's probably 3 foot through.
3 feet diameter.
Not around, but 3 foot straight through.
Yeah, no doubt, right straight.
Yeah, 'cause
3 feet like that.
yeah,
That's a piece of information I bet you never had.
because,
Well, there's some boards in a blacksmith shop that are 24, 26 inches.
oh yeah, we get those all the time.
Yeah. And those were ponderosas? Yellow pine?
Yellow pine.
Yeah. You know what might have happened to any of the old saddles and harness on the ranch?
Yeah, we left them here, except a brand new set. And I took the brand new set, and I didn't have any place to store a lot of stuff. I took collars and harnesses and that stuff up to Paso, where his ranch was,
Yeah.
and stored them in his barn. And when they had the sale up there, they sold all my stuff.
I'm sorry, I look a little sad. That's a little disappointing there. That's a little hard to hear.
Yeah,
That's too bad.
yeah, but, you know what I should have done is, when I started up there, just have Ernie write me out a deal that this so-and-so was mine, you know, but I didn't do it. And then he passed away, and then they had that sale up there, and I've heard people say, boy, we got some good horse collars up there for reasonable.
Yeah.
We found a stove in one of the barns. The stove right here. In Ernie's. Up in Ernie's. It was up at Ernie Batasso's.
Oh, yeah, that stove, yeah.
That from here too?
No, I think Pitasso's had that one.
No, they got a history up there too. In my wanderings around here, I've never seen a wood fence. You know, the old railing riders or the trestle fences and all of those. Apparently the ranchers up in here never bothered to build wood fences.
No, we had a lot of what you might call fences that made out of wood, but we just cut trees down in these rocky hills and stuff and lay them down to make a fence. But really to fence anything in tight, why they always use barbed wire. But
You're
originally-
telling me that you'd take a lower tree and then have it horizontal on a hill so that animals couldn't climb over it?
Yeah.
Do you-
Or we'd gather up a lot of this pitch up in this country and put them this way with a cross in them, and, for fences.
You know, I just learned something. Again, I've seen those horizontal logs and couldn't figure out what in Hades they were for. It would work, I guess.
Yeah, used to be quite a few of them up in here.
Now down in the valley on the mesas and out north along the ridges, there's a lot of stone wall fences.
Yeah,
Didn't use those up in here either.
no, they didn't use those up here, but they did a lot on the foothills down there.
Miles of them. Think the Indians ever made any fences?
I don't think so.
There are people who do. In the lack of those fences, then all of the fences I've seen up in here have been barbed wire.
Yeah, biggest percentage of them.
And that was expensive.
Yeah,
But your family fared a little better than a lot of people there anyway, but there is some old barbed wire up here.
oh, yeah.
Did they use slick wire up here at all? I've never seen any up in
No,
this country. There's some out at Rabbit Mountain, and some on Mount Sanitas. There's some here and there, but apparently never got up here.
Jim, was your family one of the first ones to put barbed wire up here? Because you said it was all open country.
yeah, I think
For a long-
probably the ones that's put up the biggest part of it, yeah. As I say, there was a few of these little homesteaders that fenced
Just
part
around
of
the
their
place.
ground, but really the biggest part was put up by my granddad and
Yeah.
dad.
Do you ever build any fence?
Afraid I have.
You know, one of the worst chores on a ranch or a farm, I'm sure, must be digging post holes.
Yeah, in this country.
I remember a fellow one time that was out incensed beyond belief to think that somebody had stolen a whole pickup load of fence post holes that he had stored.
They're awful hard to come by for somebody to be stealing them, I tell you what.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing what people will do.
And believe.
And believe.
The old railroad grade from the 1882 Utah and Pacific Road down on the mesas came up South Boulder Creek.
Right.
How far up did it go?
Well, it worked different places clear up to Yankee Doodle Lake.
And there's places down here on the creek that I'll defy you to show me where it went, I think.
Well, probably a lot of it's washed out, I don't know. But, you know, right down here on the creek, when you take the road down and hit the creek, that
That's one of
stretch
them.
up through there is the old railroad grade. Then when it used to be before they had a road down to El Reyes Canyon, when I think the water board put the good road, but it used to be an old one down. But it used to be that there wasn't a road down there, and you went down in below Neil's place, and then caught that old railroad grade and went clear up above El Reyes Springs, and where that wire used to be across the canyon that old Baldwin walked, well, it went right in back of that through there. And that was the old railroad gate, or this one here.
There's quite a cut there yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there wasn't any road for a while right down the creek.
I know of the Winnegar Ranch down on the South Boulder Creek, but was there a Winnegar Ranch up in here? They got the Winnegar Ridge named up in here.
I think that was
There
from his
must have been a
friend.
present.
I think that was because he was the only one up there. They named the ridge down through there.
You think he was a pioneer settler up here?
Oh, yeah.
That's worth knowing. You know anything about the family?
No, I don't.
I can't even remember the name half the time.
It's the end of the alphabet.
Because he's the one that used to take potatoes to Blackhawk and Central and sell them right off his wagon.
Was that Winnegar Ranch down on South Boulder where George Giggy's hanging out? That road from Magnolia down there is known as a cutoff road. And that was a stage road cutoff. Were those buildings down there associated with stage line at all, do you know?
Oh, right before you hit the creek?
Uh-huh. That whole cutoff runs right.
Right past it, but that was the Winnegar house.
Yes,
That's where he lived.
right.
But whether he had any connection with the stage or not, I couldn't say.
I'm disappointed in you. I've been years trying to prove it. You know, I know the Indians were up in here, and the family had a collection of artifacts that they picked up. But do you know of any Indian campsites or locations in the area here? With all of that open land, there undoubtedly were some.
Well, if you go right at the gate, top of the hill, and then down through that opening, down through there, towards the language mill,
Uh-huh.
well, there was a camp right in there. Because when I was a kid, you'd find little deals of chips and that kind of stuff, where they've been making arrows and stuff, and then we found several arrows down there and skinning knife. So that used to be a camp in there.
Right. Sure sounds like. The skinning knife was a white man's knife?
Pardon?
Was the skinning knife a white man's knife?
No, it was
an
an
Indian
Indian knife.
stone,
Yeah, stone knife.
big triangular shaped outfit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did it have a shaft on it for hafting?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have thought you'd brought me that.
Because I don't have it anymore.
You know where it is?
Huh?
Do you know where it is?
No, I don't.
It's a shame that a lot of that stuff got away.
Well,
There've been several of those found in the country here, and that one type seems rather unique for the country here. You think it was Arapaho?
I don't have any idea what breed they were.
Yeah, not very likely. I just wondered.
At one time, Lita had a lot of that. Lita had a lot of that material at one time because we looked at it. She had it in shoe boxes. That was from that camp.
Yeah.
There was also one at the bottom of the road, where the road went down to the creek. There was a camp down there also. We found a few things when we were first surveying the ranch, 20 some years ago.
That's right, near that ruin down there.
Yeah,
With that.
right where the road hits the bottom by the creek.
Sure seems like a logical.
Yeah, there was another one there.
Well, Jim, I gotta apologize. I've run out of gas, and that doesn't happen very often. I'm gonna leave you at the mercy of these people to learn a thing or two, but that's a list of questions that I had, and I sure do thank you for your answers, and some of them have been mighty informative and, to me, very valuable. Couldn't have got it anywhere else.
Oh, you could have maybe. But I,
Who? They gotta be alive. They're scarce anymore.
not too many of them.
How many, now, I know coming up here, we talked about the fact that you fellers were a year apart in school, but of your
He
classmates,
graduated.
he graduated, okay, makes a difference, it does, okay. But of your schoolmates, that you recall, who's left, who's still around, that you fellers recall?
Well, Ollie Shepherd is still around.
And his wife.
Hmm?
And his wife.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's from an old pioneer family too, the Hoovers.
yeah. And,
Well, maybe I can help a little there. The high school that we went to was a state preparatory school built in '87. And it was a great big sprawling brick building, 2 stories.
Yeah.
And
well, it had a basement, that's where I blew the
Yeah.
forge up.
Where you blew up the what?
What's the story?
Yeah, oh yeah, we need this one.
No, they used to have the metalwork in the basement. And so I was taking blacksmith training. And
You kinda already had a leg up on that, didn't you?
yeah,
Okay, all right, go ahead.
but I got the coal a little bit too wet and put it over there and get it real hot, you know. And all at once the thing blew up.
almost graduated us early, didn't you? Well, the fact of the matter is that the graduating class of 1937, and I was in that class, you were in the one the year before, and that did it. They just tore the darn thing down.
Yeah.
Built the present Boulder High School. And as a result of that graduating class being the last one in Old Prep, a group got together back in 1985, anticipating the 50th anniversary of that graduation, and then put in time from then until 87 to formulate a group to host a reunion and get the history and all of those myriad details it takes to do these things. There were women mixed up in it, and they're great for details. but it's great for history too. And as a result, we did have a reunion, and it was so much fun that from then up until 3 years ago, they had an annual reunion for that class, and it got to where there's a few of us that they invited everybody who'd ever graduated from Boulder Prep, and had the reunion every year anyway. And now there's a few of us left that I think this year they decided to just drop it. Yeah. And as to how many are left, a handful.
Do you recall?
Quite a few widows.
Yeah. Do you recall anybody other than the couple that Mr. Walker mentioned a minute ago? Do you know of anybody else that you
Oh
can
yeah,
think
but
of?
the names wouldn't mean anything to you, but I'll be glad to recite a few.
Oh well, no, that's okay. That's just curiosity more than anything else.
Well, you know what that did to a cussed cat?
I do know what it did. That makes me glad I ain't no cat. It does.
Well, you got claws, I found that out.
Yeah.
I would suppose that there'd be somewhere in the 20s
Yeah.
of us left.
All right. Well, how many in your respective classes? How many folks was in your?
You got a memory, you tell them. You got a memory, you tell them.
No, I don't.
You don't remember the graduating class numbers? I don't either. I sure don't. Of course, I got it all in that history I was speaking of at home, but off the top of my head, I can't remember anything anymore. I'm just deadhead.
I bet you remember vinegar after today. I say, I bet you remember vinegar after today.
No,
No, no.
it just seems like I hardly ever can. There's certain names that I can hardly ever remember. And I went to school with open space last spring. Took a naturalist class of 22 people. And I couldn't sit here and name 5 of them. I can't remember names anymore. There's just a mental block there. It's got so bad that I introduced my wife as a Speaker of the House.
And she probably appreciates that too.
Got used to it.
Yeah.
But that's awful, just having the memory just explode. I can remember some dates, but names, there's just a mental block. I just can't do it.
That's all right.
So, I'll try to shut up for a little while here. What would you like to have people remember about your family in this ranch?
That's kind of a hard question to answer.
Well, I can guarantee you this, Jim, we'll always keep the name Walker
Yeah.
on this ranch.
Well, I guess my granddad, I think I was about maybe 3 or 4 when he passed away. And that, I really didn't know him, you know. And then I guess the thing I liked about the place was you were pretty free and did what you wanted. Nobody told you you couldn't go cut a tree down, or you couldn't set it on fire, or you couldn't do this or that. And it was kind of a free life.
With that being the case, would you resent somebody complaining about ranchers, cattle, trees? Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
But, you know, the thing that you keep hearing about these forest fires, and they've got rid of the biggest protection they ever had. And that's to put cattle out and graze that grass off. We never had a fire up in here for years, as long as we ran the cattle up here. And you take that, I think that Winnegar Ridge out through there, last time I was ever out there was just nothing but a mass of dead grass. And if that ever gets started, why, look out.
Well, and then the overgrown underbrush,
Yeah.
trees and stuff in the
The
Ponderosa
grass
Forest.
will travel and burn so much faster than about anything you know, when the old steam engines used to go through by Crescent over there, they would set fires, you know. And boy, if you did get at them in just a little bit in where there was much grass, why, they spread about as fast as you could run.
What was your best firefighting tool on a grass fire? What was your best firefighting tool on a grass fire?
Just, there were people that lived here.
No, I mean your tool.
Oh,
We used a wet gunny sack.
Yeah.
You put out more fire with that than,
oh, yeah.
and now they don't even have those.
No, you don't get gunny sacks.
No.
How often did you get together with the Batassos? Just when you ran the cattle in the summertime?
No,
Nothing? No.
Ernie and May and Marge and I used to go to, through the winter time, used to go to dances all
Dances?
the time. And then, of course, through the summer while we was up at Tolan,
Totally.
no, we was running quite a bit
Were you?
with Tassel.
You go to the dance hall in Sugarloaf? Or
Well,
down in Boulder?
not too much in Sugarloaf. We used to go to Jimtown
Okay.
and the Grange out the other side of Boulder. And at the stage stop at Rollinsville.
Rollinsville?
That Grange you're talking about, was that the Pleasant View Grange?
No, it's about where the fire station is out there now. Where you start towards the lake, or Boulder Reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, it used to be right on that corner there. Used to be a Grange, and isn't there a fire station there now?
Yeah, Boulder Rural has their fire
Yeah.
station.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
51st Street.
You don't mean the one in Niwot, do you?
Yeah, there was a Grange there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still there.
No, this is different.
Well, just think how far it is to go from here in those days, though, or the places he mentioned. Just to hop up and down for a few hours. How long did you stand on those?
Well, sometimes get kind of light.
Didn't you tell me? You told me a story one time. You snuck home, and you managed to get upstairs, and just as you got in bed, your dad woke you up.
Mm-hmm. Well, he said, "Did you bring the horses in?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you better go get them then." So we could work the next day, and boy, that next day was the longest day in the year.
I think in one form or another, we probably all had a similar experience, I would expect.
Not Doc.
No, oh no, not Doc,
I remember when I was studying those stone walls we spoke about a while ago. There's one at the Dunn place, just below Eldred Springs, that must be 1.5 miles long. And you know, that's a lot of rocks.
Oh, yeah.
And I was studying those to try to figure out who did it and why. One of the old timers over there said, well, he said, kids being kids, some of the old folks found out that if they get those young fellas hauling rocks and building walls. They didn't go near as far on a Saturday night to a damn dance.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or stay as long, I guess. Never thought of that.
Get a little bit of that energy out and you can keep them a little closer to the house.
I guess so.
That's right.
I think it would work all right.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought of that one.
I gotta ask you, Jim, how did you meet girls?
How'd I meet girls?
Yeah, at school or?
Well, a few at school, but mainly just at these dances around.
The dances? Is that where you met your wife?
Well, see, my wife was a Daniels, and Carl Daniels was a brother to my wife. So that's the way I met her.
Okay.
Was it love at first sight?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
No, no.
Wrong answer.
I went to first sight, as I remember her, she was about that tall.
But it was the right answer.
I had to grow into that one a little bit.
We both had to grow
Oh,
into
okay,
that.
okay.
Well, back when, they were kind of scarce anyway.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can remember when they used to import a schoolman for some of these mining communities. Poor gal come into town and there was 40 guys just waiting for her. Must have been awful.
You know, in the farming communities, Doc, it was about the same way.
Yeah,
The schools would be girls right out of college, young girls, and there were all these bachelor farmers waiting around for them.
yeah, there sure wasn't any question in those days about meeting some of the fellas.
Yeah.
Or all of them.
Yeah.
Times have changed greatly,
Yeah.
let me tell you.
Yeah, a rural schoolman was on borrowed time. Jim, would you like to see that steam engine?
Yeah, don't look at it.
I mean, really, would you?
No.
Yeah, I thought so.
Right there.
Why don't we do that?
Well, fellas, we sure do appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time today to join us out here and reminisce a little bit. This is mighty special. Well, thank you very much for being here.
I think all of us would be interested in that.
I would actually, I tell you what, are you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Do it.
Well, as I say, all these fields around here, we build a barn at, and usually a shed for the cattle. I say we build a barn at most of these fields so we could store the hay in it. Right. And then we build a shed, most of them had a shed built onto them for protection for the cattle, you know. And then the barns are built with a manger like that, across this side and full length with this side. You'd stack the hay inside, and then wintertime when it was snowy and bad, you could get up there and just throw the hay down in this manger and you wouldn't have to fight the weather or anything.
The wind never got your hay.
No, in the manger. You feed them out in the open and they have to run for it.
Yeah.
Chasing down a mouthful.
Yeah.
Is this barn down here typical?
Pretty much a little bigger than most of them.
Suppose we could get over there and you could explain
Okay.
just how that, the idea was that you could bring hay down and store it in there without having to trim it in, and then you could just feed it through the windows to the cattle without waste and so on. And that's a different concept all the way around.
Well, and that was, see, we used drags to pull our hay in with. They were about 8 foot wide and 14 foot long, and just slid on the ground.
Isn't that the kind of a sweep that they used up in North Park to work hay?
No,
No?
this one, when you pulled it in there, you got on top of your load with a pitchfork and shoveled it in the barn. Then we'd have somebody in the barn putting it back. And it was all handwork on that.
Well, I'll be honest, I'd kind of like to have an explanation of it myself, and I think Don would.
Oh, yeah.
I moved it like a quick read once. This would like a backyard.
Probably is. And on mine, that one we had was a little bigger, but maybe not. Maybe it's a kid's mind, you know. But I thought it was a little bigger than that. But I couldn't say.
How was it
Get
mounted?
out of the backyard, right, Rich?
How was it mounted to use?
How was it mounted?
Yeah, they have a timber bed for it or
Just
something?
timber base set on, yeah. Some 12 to 12s or 14 to 14 base on it. Wood base. And,
Squared timbers?
Hmm?
Squared timbers?
yeah,
I imagine that thing would tend to jump around a little bit if it wasn't anchored down pretty good.
oh, yeah. Yeah, you bet it would. But they run awful smooth and awful nice. Quietest engine you can get a hold of.
Do you know what the horsepower was?
No.
And it run, what was the size saw you said you had on it?
Oh, about 3 foot.
3 foot saw?
No, let's see. More than that.
I think you said 42 a little while ago.
Yeah, 44 inch, I think, yeah. Because some of those big timbers, why, we'd have to slab a little bit first before the saw would take clear through it.
How was, I don't know anything about these things. How was the motive power delivered to a saw?
Well,
The saw go this way? Or?
one had a steam came from your boiler
Yeah.
to your, back here. Or probably this one here. And the steam came in there, and then you used to have a handle on there, and you'd pull the handle this way, and the steam would hit that side of the piston, pull it this way, and then you'd push it back, and then the steam would go the other way, and after you got her under motion, you'd set the handle in just straight up and down, and the steam would run that piston back and forth.
Then how was the power delivered to the sides? With through belts
Built
on,
off to the flywheel.
so you've got two hubs.
Yeah, but
One of them had to run the carriage.
no, one belt run carriage and everything, run the saw and the whole outfit. The other one, if we wanted to, we'd put a belt on and run a planer to plane the lumber.
You finished lumber on this project?
Oh, yeah, we used to plane it, yeah.
How about that? So you were delivering finished lumber down?
Well, plain lumber, it wasn't finished. I mean, not like they call finished now. You just planed one side of it and made it smooth.
Just plain one side? Would you cut 1 inch and then plane it to,
Well, yeah, it's 3/4. But usually we cut it just a little over an inch. You'd have a good 3/4 when you got through planing it.
I'd like to have seen that. What run the carriage? How did you get the
Well,
the log to go through the saw, and then it'd have to be offset and come back.
but see, one of these belts run up to your shaft that run the saw. Then off of that shaft, there was a wood pulley, about that big, that had a cable on it. And when you run the carriage back, why this cable would pull the carriage back, and when you went into the saw, you'd pull it the other way and take the cable ahead. And that one shaft run the carriage back and forth that run the saw.
That must have been a busy place.
Yeah,
Fairly dangerous operation too, wasn't it?
well, I guess, but we never thought much
Never
about
thought
it.
of it that way.
No,
Any of the fellows ever get hurt while you was milling, or
no,
no?
outside of maybe getting a toe mashed or something. That was,
Nothing serious though.
no,
Tom would be a good interpretive thing to do.
What's that? Mash a
The
toe?
sawmill running.
Oh yeah, I think it'd be a real good thing to do. If we could get OSHA and everybody else to let us do it.
Just don't tell him.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm 14 years old and most 25-year-olds work today, I do believe.
I don't know, you didn't think anything about it then, you just did it.
No, I know, it just had to be done.
Well, we got this one from a fella in Boulder who said he hauled it out of Martin Gulch. That when Doc Taylor owned the place, he let him go down there and he took it apart, piece by piece, hauled it to Boulder, and then he restored it in his backyard. He said it came off the ranch.
And when the belt came off the ranch,
And he just called us up one day and asked if we wanted it. And it is heavy. Man, is this thing heavy.
yeah, it's heavy.
You remember, were you about this movie?
Yeah. Figure how we
Yeah.
did it. No, we rolled a lot of it.
There were about 8 of us, and we had little rollers under it, if I remember.
Yeah. I don't remember how we got it on
We had to use a winch,
the, yeah.
get it up on a trailer.
And has it been sitting here since then?
Yeah. But it's completely operational. You know, he rebuilt the whole thing. And once a year, he would hook it up to a boiler and run it. And we haven't done that since.
Of course, we had two. The first engine we had down there, steam engine, after we run it for several years, the shaft broke and blew the piston out of the back end of it. And then we went up, oh, kind of up in there where that university lake is up in there, kind of in that ward area.
Yeah.
And got another engine out of the mill up there.
Oh.
And that was the last one we had in there.
You know how they got this thing up here?
Do I know how to set it up?
Well, I mean, how'd they get it up here from, I suppose, Denver?
I don't know. I know how we got that one that we brought down in here with 4 head of horses and skids and hook onto it and slide her up on a wagon, and 4 head of horses brought her down.
It takes some doing.
Well, the boiler that supposedly came with it is sitting back on the other side of the pig barn over there,
But that's not the boiler that was down here.
not tied to this one.
Well, it might be, I don't know.
Oh, but not the one that you
Wasn't
guys
the
used.
boiler we had down here.
Okay.
That, the boiler up there reminds me of the one that was down below the Martin house that I've told you about. And that boiler up there looks, as long as I remember, it looks very similar, because it had a real short firebox on it.
Yeah.
And the one we had, as I say, I could put an 8-foot slab in.
Yeah.
And, but what happened to that boiler that was down here, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think, where was it? After the Second World War, where there was a hard for metal, You know, I think that's when they took that
Mhm.
out of down here.
Yeah.
And that's when they set the, what was left of the language mill on fire to get the bolts and stuff out of it.
Out of there. Yeah.
But that was after I was gone.
Doctor, did you have anything specific you wanted to ask Jim about this particular barn? I know you wanted him to see that steam engine, but I didn't know if there was anything
No.
about this barn.
No, I just interested in impression of Cindy. He seemed quite interested in it, and we just got to look at it to get all the history out of it that we can.
Fair enough.
It must have had an interesting history. I don't know a thing about steam engines, but they were all over the country here. Incidentally, I was up at Cardinal with Jeff the other day, and there's a big one up there that looks pretty near complete, as near as I can tell, including a boiler and a big one, firebox. I got quite a little history on that mill too, by the way. Interesting.
Did it operate up until the 50s?
No,
No?
as best I found, it was fitted up in about 1940
Okay.
and run till 42, and was shut down as being non-essential to the war effort. And it had just been set up as a ball mill,
Yeah.
but I'm surprised at that. I thought it was probably running tungsten, but apparently it was still a gold-silver operation and non-essential to the war effort. And there it sits, just
Yeah.
like they shut it down, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was a stamp operation to begin with. And they converted it to a ball mill later on. But that engine up there, there can't be many of them sitting on dumps that are, it looks just about like this one.
Yeah.
I think it's a 2-cylinder.
Well, let's look at some of the other barns.
Okay.
But then, we put the tin on this side of it because the shingles were getting bad. I think you've taken them off since.
Well, we replaced the we took all the metal off and replaced the shingles, and I'll tell you, that took quite a while
Yeah.
to shingle that whole barn.
But originally it was those shingles, but then we put the tin over it when we, rather than replace the shingles.
Well, these slab roofs aren't working real well. There's,
No,
The fire gets hot enough to boil that pitch in there, and it just impermeates the wood, and it just darn near becomes
but you know
metal.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think my dad said that he was about 5 or 6 years old when the fire started up in there toward above Pine Cliffs and burnt clear down to this opening over here. And he said that him and his mom was up on the roof with buckets of water because sparks was coming from that fire clear over to the house. That was the log house up here. And that's what made the post, though, because it burnt yellow pine, big one. This little stuff won't make anything.
Did you ever, some of the people here probably have never heard that if you take one of those old pitch posts on a cold winter day and try to turn it into firewood, you can chip the edge off your axe?
Yeah.
did you ever?
Makes a good starter. Boy, you get a good pitch post or a good piece of pitch and take your knife and about 3 shavings on the side, light it, and it'll burn just like gasoline practically.
Did you ever burn the bottoms of them to make them hard? No.
No.
So I've heard people have done that.
I've heard of it too. We never did.
An old saying that no man can be considered a poor man if he has a stack of pitch faggots to feed his fire.
No, in the Pacific Northwest, they call that.
Put the hay through those windows and keep somebody in here tramping it down, and then like where you come in right here, you'd build a, from there over there, you'd build a circle like this. And then when you wanted to get the hay out of here, you'd throw it down and just take it down there. Or if you wanted to throw it out the windows, you could, but usually we just set it down in here.
And the cattle could just feed through the windows, and the hay was under cover.
Yeah, that, of course, we used to stack it up over the top too. Because we used to fill this barn. I say, we used to fill this barn just off of these fields up here.
I was gonna ask you how much you put in here at any one time.
Well, they figured.
Like even with the windows or higher than that?
Yeah, about, they figured close to 100 ton. That is loose hay.
Loose hay, right. Mhm. That's a lot of pitchforking,
Yeah, that's a lot of pitchforking is right.
particularly probably when it gets down lower and you have to go clear back to get it.
Well, we'd feed out, as I say, we'd feed some out up in here, and then,
The timber they used up in here, big ones for saw logs and small ones for wood and construction. But I just know that it was really fun to put together.
and down in here it was the same thing.
Okay,
Build a,
build a
Circle like
semicircle around here.
and then you could pitch the hay right down in there.
Yeah. And these were all your draft horses on this side?
Yeah, well, draft horses, and in the wintertime we keep saddle horses.
Saddle
in.
horses in too?
I think we asked them one time before and he didn't know, because
And the same way, at that door there,
Off that door, yeah.
you build a circle around it so we can,
Mhm.
when you're throwing hay off the, well, we'd have it stacked as high as we could get it in here.
Yeah.
And that made it a lot easier to feed out.
Did you use the old stuff for bedding material or in
No.
here, or you didn't use any?
Well, we always raised enough
Did you have some oats?
wheat for
Wheat?
chicken feed.
Okay.
We'd raise our wheat for chicken feed, and then when they scratched it out, then we'd bring the straw
The straw
here
in
for
here.
bedding.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, who built this building? I heard it was your grandfather and his brother, is that true?
Well, my granddad was in, and I don't, fact is, I never met his brother, but his granddad, I know my granddad was in it, but you take most of this flooring and stuff in the stalls here, came out of the language mill.
Out of what?
Out of the language mill.
Oh,
And the same with that flooring in the garage up there, it came out of the language mill. It's about 3 inch.
Yeah, we've had to replace some of them. I've always wondered why it was 3 inch and not 4 or 2.
That's what was available.
Yeah, 3 inch.
Yeah,
What'd
Well,
you
that's what I
have,
figured, that's what they had.
what'd you have before that? Or was that the first time there was a floor in?
that's the first
What
flooring.
was the first floor?
Otherwise, you just had the
Just the dirt?
dirt, yeah,
Okay.
but then they replaced it with that flooring. All of this whole deal down through here is replaced with that flooring out of the language mill.
you know where it came from?
Some of the sawmills around here, I guess.
That was around 1900.
Jim, one of our volunteers that does the tours up here, told me last fall, he said, I tell you something we need to get in that hay barn down there. He said, we need a slip scoop in there so that he can show folks how a lot of this dirt was took out of here by your granddaddy. So we got a slip scoop laying over here on the floor now. Does that seem reasonable to you, how he might have excavated a lot of this dirt with a team and a slip?
Well, you could have, yeah. You always used the slip for road work.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't say if that's, they probably did take it out some.
Well, I don't know if this one looks anything like the one that was up here.
Yeah, that's the same thing, I've got the road clear over the hand.
Actually, maybe out here.
You have your team there, and you grab these handles and tip it up for how far you want to dig.
Sure.
And then if you hit a rock and the team is kind of, well, you kind of ended up at that end of it.
Yeah, I'll bet you did. Get kind of flipped over the handles there then.
You're right.
Well, I guess.
I don't doubt what they've used to slip like that, all right?
Sure.
I have.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. For, you know, we worked on the county road years ago, and it was just single track to it. Why, it was hard places to get dirt at, you know.
Sure.
Where we had loose dirt, we'd take one of these and load her up and bring her down and scatter her along the road to where there wasn't any dirt.
Right. Separate the men from the boys, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I bet it would.